So for number 3 in our little series about buying a house in Ireland if you're a non-citizen, I want to talk to you about funding your dream house. Now, I am not in any way a financial expert. I'm not going to go into massive amounts of detail on this. But what I want to just go through is just a quick skim across the top of the options that you have, and then you can do a lot more research yourself with the specifics of your own finances, your own country, your own banking system, and then sure, you'll be absolutely sorted. If you haven't watched the first 2 videos in the series, I would advise that you go back and do them. The first one we talked about the really important, not so fun parts of moving over here. So like the legalities of it, what you think is easy but really isn't easy. And then yesterday we talked about all the sunshiny happy bits and the ways that maybe you can get in a lot easier than going through the rigmarole of the whole process that everyone else does. So watch the both of them if you haven't already. And if you've finished watching them and you've been with me for the last 2 days, then let's get started on finances. Okay, so the first option I want to go through with you guys is financing your mortgage in Ireland. So assume you're not already living here, you don't have citizenship at the moment, and you want to buy a little house in rural Ireland that costs, let's say, 50 or 60,000 euro. So first of all, banks kind of decide what they want to do on their own here. Not every bank will give mortgages to foreign residents. But then it's not a blanket no either. So what you need to do is be prepared to do the legwork and get in touch with banks and find out. Now, they tend to favour applications sometimes where people are planning on moving to Ireland soon and permanently. So instead of you going to buy a holiday home, if you're actually in the process of shutting down your life in the States or in Australia or some other country, and you're in the process of coming over here and getting your life together to live here, to work here for the next 40 to 50 years with your kids and all, definitely that's something that they look a lot more favourably on. So that's a great place to start. As with all mortgages, obviously being financially secure helps. So if you have buckets of cash in your bank account, you're going to be a lot better off than somebody who's trying to get a mortgage when they have very little. Now, obviously, this is like such a no-brainer, and obviously people who have more money are going to find it a little bit easier. But the thing to remember is that if you have your bank accounts in good standing, this is like every mortgage advice you get of everybody. But basically, like if your finances are in good standing, then obviously it's going to improve your chances of a bank wanting to take the risk on you when you're not living in Ireland. Now, when it comes to deposits in Ireland, we have a tendency to have 10% normally when it comes to first-time buyers is asked, and then 20% could be for second-time buyers or for buy-to-let mortgages, holiday homes, stuff like that. So as someone who doesn't live in the country and with a little bit of a higher risk on the bank, there is a pretty good chance that you will be asked for the 20% at least. So keep that in mind when you're saving up your deposit, that's the figure you need to be thinking about when it comes to your deposit. The next thing I'd advise would be definitely go with a mortgage broker if you're looking for a mortgage in Ireland and you're not here yourself. One of the main reasons I just advise this is obviously they're trained and they're quite good at what they do, but it also takes a lot of the legwork out of it for you if you're not living here, you're not trying to get in touch with loads and loads of banks and companies like that on your own. So that's something I would totally recommend. If you can get expert advice on anything, just get it. That's the way I look at life. So that's a great one. The other thing that I want to talk about is if you're getting in touch with banks and building societies and stuff in Ireland and you're thousands of miles away, don't assume that an email is going to be enough to get a reply. There is every chance that you might have to ring them, to talk to them in person, really nab them when it comes to getting the information. It's not just that the banks are dropping the ball here. The thing you have to remember is that the information that you're asking them and that they need from you is quite personal, it's quite sensitive, and it's not really the safest thing to be sending over an email. So talk to them in person. Make the effort, spend the money on the overseas calls, and you will be so glad that you did it, because at least you'll get a straight answer quickly and you can just move on to the next step in the process. So if you're borrowing in your own country, you're trying to get a mortgage basically for an overseas investment property, if you think of it. Because even if you never rent it out, you never do anything with it, it's still an asset, it's still sitting there, hopefully increasing in value as the years go by. So overseas investment property is the kind of mortgage that you're looking for. And once you get one of those, sure, I mean, you could get that 10 or 15 years before you ever decided to move over. You could be paying off it, going over on your holidays every year and having this game plan in place for when you could go there full time, and obviously applying through all of the red tape that you need to do for the steps we've been talking about before. Now, when it comes to an investment property, it's fairly common that, again, the deposits are a little bit higher than they will be on normal, your first time home, let's say. So you could have to pay up to 20%, but this is, again, very normal even here in Ireland when it comes to investment properties. So don't let that scare you off. Just have the money together and buy a cheaper house if you want the deposit to be smaller. That's what I always do. I have one house. I sound like such a guru. I'm not, I promise. So I hope you've learned lots from my little series about how to buy a house in Ireland if you are a non-citizen. I know it took me ages to get this video together. I've been wanting to do it for so long. I think nearly since the very beginning I wanted to do this, but I'm delighted we have the information together now. You guys are all going to be in a stronger position when it comes to deciding what you want to do, figuring out whether this is even an option for you. And you know, if it isn't, it's not the end of the world, but you need to know that information now. You can't just spend the next 20 years planning this pie in the sky dream of doing this and then realize then that you've framed your whole life around this plan and it's not going to work. So find out the information now, and if it's not going to work for you, move on and do something else. There are so many other huge things you can do, so many other places you can live if you don't want to be in the country you're in at the moment. So I wish you all the best of luck. I am dying to see how many of you guys end up over here. I want to know of loads of granddads that you've pulled out of the woodwork that were born in places like Roscommon and West Cork and stuff like that. I think it's going to be so fantastic. Oh, and one last thing just before I go. When you're thinking about moving to Ireland, don't just move to Dingle or West Cork. There are so many other parts of Ireland. Really consider maybe moving somewhere that your family's from. Talk to that granddad again, or look back through the records and find out where he actually came from. There is so much more to Ireland than these little tourist areas, and it's so much different even outside of those areas that going there isn't really giving you a great taste of what our country has to offer. Look at the counties that had really high levels of immigration back in the day, because there's a good chance they're the counties that your family are actually from, and they're the ones that you have links in and heritage in. And sure, why else would you be coming here if not to connect with that? You don't want to be just living in Dingle. I mean, Dingle's fantastic, but everyone can't be from Dingle. There has to be somewhere else that you're from. So do the research, find out the information, and open your eyes to other parts of Ireland if you're planning on coming over here, because you'll get way more value for money, and you will actually be somewhere that means something to your family and to your lineage, and it's just going to be so much more important and special to you if you're in a part of Ireland for a reason other than just because you went on vacation there a couple of years ago. So I'm going to stop giving out now. I hope that didn't come across as giving out, because it's so great to think of everybody coming over. It's so great to think of people reconnecting with their Irish roots. Just don't be afraid to travel outside of the tourist resorts, because it's just so lovely out there.